The first question that always comes up is, you're studying these disorders that involve the hematopoietic stem cell, and which are all involved in causing a defect in the production of blood cells. What does this have to do with cancer? What possible relationship could this have? Because on the one hand, you're talking about a group of disorders that we study that basically are characterized by a hypoproliferative state. When you take cells from the patients, they don't grow very well. When you examine the bone marrow of these patients, there are no bone marrow cells to examine because they are actually missing or absent as a part of the pathophysiology of this disorder. On the other hand, many of these disorders not only share relationships with each other. For example, one disorder that is the subject of interest of my previous mentor, Dr. Neil Young at NIH, aplastic anemia. This is a disorder that has a very close relationship with another acquired genetic disorder called paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, or PNH. And these two disorders also share a relationship with the so-called inherited bone marrow failure syndromes, which have been really what have interested me for almost 20 years now. And but the ones that I'm going to be discussing today are going to be Fanconi's anemia, dyskeratosis congenita. And what I'd like to point out here is that these are all disorders of the hematopoietic stem cell. They are all, for the most part, they're very rare disorders. For example, aplastic anemia and the inherited bone marrow failures are certainly 1 in a million type of disorders. On the other hand, they share certain pathophysiological relationships with more common disorders like myelodysplastic syndrome. For the hematologists who are here in the audience, they recognize that actually MDS, if you consider it in aggregate, is actually one of the most common of the hematologic malignancies. And of course, all these hematologic disorders share a relationship of being able to transform to acute myeloid leukemia, which is certainly a very interesting example of the progression between pre-leukemia or myelodysplastic syndrome and acute myeloid leukemia. On the other hand, the inherited bone marrow failure syndromes, which are due to, presumably, to genetic diseases that affect all the cells of the body, are also, surprisingly, associated with disorders of hyperproliferation or cancer. And so this is something that I'm going to be touching on again and again during the course of my talk, and that is the tension between a disorder in which fundamentally you're looking at states in which there is a hypoproliferative state. On the other hand, there is a predisposition, in the genetic forms at least, to very high rates of cancer and solid tumors, as I'm going to discuss shortly. Now, in trying to understand the inherited bone marrow failure syndromes, I think it's useful to look at possible mechanisms that the genes can tell us.